and welcome to another episode of the Fat Potato Podcast. Today we'll be talking about the Ghost in the Shell movie, 2017.
Joining us tonight is our special guest.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, Josh.
No worries, I'm only super famous anytime.
So yes, I mean we have seen the 1995 original movie animated.
It should be the previous episode.
Yes, and we've just finished watching the 2017 live action release. So what are our first impressions?
I didn't hate it, I'll put it that way. I didn't necessarily like it either. It was a cookie cutter action movie with some cyborg elements to it, and like it did sort of touch on the humanity versus like, are you really human if you are completely cybernetic, or at least your brain is. But you only really touched it. It didn't really try to elaborate on it anyway.
Yeah, I think they really didn't grasp like the whole point of the previous movie, as in they went like with a different direction, more of a action kind of thing, as opposed to more exploring like the philosophical ideas and all that stuff. Yeah. But overall, I mean, I think the movie was alright. It's a pretty generic action movie.
Yep.
I think fans of the old movie probably wouldn't like it that much because it kind of misses the mark on what the whole Ghost in the Shell thing.
Just the theme of it.
Yeah. But I think the CGI in it is a bit dodgy, a little bit.
Yeah.
It looks.
Yeah.
It kind of put me off of it a bit. Like, it didn't throw me off completely, but every now and then I saw it and I'm just like, oh, we're going through this again. Because it seems to have these transitions where it's like, alright, she's on the bike or she's gone somewhere, and it just keeps panning out to all the other scenery stuff, which the movie sort of did, but I think it did it better in the animated movie than it did this. Not sure why, but I just feel that way.
Well, they changed what the scenery was as well.
Yeah, I felt like it did. Like, just like the holograms and stuff, it was in it, but in this they really focused that like there was big holograms and stuff like that. There were big people moving around.
I would have hated living in a city with that kind of advertising all over in my face and shit.
Yeah.
It's
But,
really in your face.
I do agree. I do feel like the CGI it made you feel like you were inside a video game. Like, it just seemed like it was almost a complete animated movie. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like if maybe there was more budgeting towards the CGI, it could have been a bit better mixed in with your proper...
I mean, the budget would be pretty big, right? They have some big names and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just so heavily edited that you were like, none of it looks real anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the introduction, opening credits. There was definitely some impressive visuals done to show how she was being built, just like in the original animated. There was a great opening, same way.
Speaking of, I did like how they kept the music of it at the very title entrance where she's in the body, or getting put into the body, so...
we can come back to the sound because because that's another whole topic on itself.
Yeah.
But the visuals, like the way they did the environment with all the CG kind of advertisements and stuff, I don't think kind of gave the same feeling that the old one did.
There was a few things that I liked. I saw, like, when you're looking at the pavement on the road, some of the lines were painted and some of the lines were like marked with like new kinds of technology. And that sort of indicated a transition of the postmodern world developing into a highly technological one. And there were definitely things early on when dudes are just having a conversation while they're trying to suss out who their targets are. And they're just showing off little pieces of technology and just showing you how the world is different and more evolved from where we are now. Like, he was able to play a song or something in the other dude's head because of the enhancements they have. Just hinting at the type of things that they've developed. And I think some of those are pretty well slotted in there in the space that they've got of time, so no time was really wasted in the first half of the movie. I definitely felt like it dragged out a bit more in the second half. Like, the first half I felt was actually really well done, because I'm not saying like all the action and shit was really good, but it was more engaging and none of the time was wasted. And I feel like it was all used effectively to start building the story.
I think it was a really simplified version of the original. Like, it was just like condensed, but probably for a good reason, and it worked out.
We definitely spent a lot more time with our main character, and even though she was trying to figure out the whole movie whether she was a machine AI or whether she was really human, she certainly behaved like a machine, even though she didn't want to.
She was like super
Yeah.
stiff.
Yeah.
And, like it was.
So-
it was-
Yeah.
But to that, instead, she was super emotional when
Yeah.
it came to like.
So I felt she was kind of flip-floppy
Yeah.
on her behaviour. Sometimes she was more human, sometimes she was really...
Which does not make
No.
sense to the anime, because the anime she was like, it seems like she's been doing this cop thing for a while, and like she was not really emotional, and nothing really got to her
Yeah, she
until
was, like,
she
all
meets the
professional,
puppeteer, and the puppeteer gets in her head and makes a question. That's the whole point. It's making her question herself and.
It's like
whether
if she
she's
was
real
if she was really just putting on a facade for her co-workers to be all professional and shit, like maybe that would make sense, but it didn't really establish that I could be like sure that's why she was doing that, why she would behave so emotionless around people but then be more emotional when she's at home and stuff. But it didn't really solidify that for me, so I'm not 100%, and that for me just points out a bit of a character flaw in that regard, because I'm just not too sure who the character is.
Yeah, I think they kind of did it backwards, where like her movements all kind of oddly stiff.
There was a lot of
Kind of
fast forward
this
editing,
almost-
and
That's
it
what I
actually-
thought. I was like, this film feels
Well,
like it's fast forwarded half
Yeah,
the time.
certain action scenes were definitely fast forwarded, and some for just completely unnecessary reasons as well. I'm
I
not
think
too
they
sure
were
what the
just-
purpose behind it was.
I think they were like starting at normal speed and then like speeding up little bits at a time, which sort
It was
of makes
definitely
it feel-
intentional to make it look more like robotic in some ways, but in some cases it wasn't necessary. But
Like just trying to think.
it was definitely like noticeable, and that
Yeah.
takes me out of the movie. Like
Yeah.
maybe it could have been better done, but I just feel like doing a fast forwarding of your visuals is just going to get picked up by the eyes straight away.
Yeah.
I don't think that really works for the film.
Back on like the character thing, I think the 1995 one did. The characters in she seemed human on the outside, but she didn't quite feel human in the inside.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
opposed to in the new one where she's like kind of weirdly robotic, and then she doesn't really
Yeah,
question
completely
herself
agree.
too deeply onto that kind of topic. Yeah.
I'm almost ready to go straight into the comparisons between the original, because there are things that I actually liked about the original that I didn't think I would. I didn't expect to see things in this new one that I actually would have preferred to see in the old one. As we know, I sort of gave the original a pretty bad rap, like for what it probably deserves. I probably didn't do it any justice, but there was definitely a few scenes when the original had established things a lot better than this one. For instance, the trash guy driver, where he gets taken over by control. The original did that way better.
Yeah, like
Way
the way
better. From the beginning, you thought this guy was in control of himself. He was showing his co-worker, his family, and he was just doing these things, and he didn't know he was doing them. And then when he gets arrested at the end, they don't know that he's under the control yet, and then they tell him his memories are false. So you believe while you're watching this guy that his memories are his.
I can't remember, but they show him the same photo that he was holding up. It was like an empty photo or something.
It's like, this isn't your daughter. This is you. You
Yeah.
can't see this. Like, oh, it is me. And then realize his memories are false.
Yeah.
And it did it a lot better in the original.
yeah, it's like the
That whole
environment
sequence.
building and like character building.
Yeah, the whole
But
sequence
I
was
mean,
done better in the original.
But it is really slow in the original.
Yeah.
But they
It
do
is.
kind of pull off a better environment.
I think, I think they definitely established the world. It certainly fit a lot more in the original than this one. This one's got a lot of stuff on the screen, and it's sort of really hard to connect with that well when there's just so much shit in your face. You sort of just, I don't know, there's just too much, and you sort of just disconnect yourself from what you're looking at. I don't know.
Yeah,
I couldn't really focus my eyes on any one thing during the transitional scenes of the landscape. I couldn't really like look at any one thing because there's just so much on the
I
screen.
find that's a super common thing with films these days. Like,
Yeah, they
bombarded
really
with
emphasize the
CGI.
CG effects. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think like the comparison between the way they did the really modernized kind of environments compared to like the slummy kind of
Yeah, it's
dodgy
very
place
slummy in the
was
original, yeah.
I think the original did it better, where
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
kind of integrated, like it felt like it was like new future tech, but it was like old. Kind of
It was
had that
only,
old
it was only to
feeling
the
it.
privileged and the higher class, and
Yeah.
it was like the lower class that was still living in an old
all,
world.
all it really was these same slums, but with the advertisements
Mm.
and stuff as holograms in the area, because obviously
Yeah,
the
because
rich
like
people.
that
could-
scene where they do the garbage guy fighting
Yeah.
Major, like the backgrounds was kind of just
Yeah, it's
really,
really good.
old fashioned signs, as opposed to like in, I don't know, the old film seemed to have a more the signs and stuff stood out more. I don't know. Yeah.
If we're going straight into the comparisons, I felt like I got an entirely different story from this.
Yeah.
So from the original, I got the feeling that the villain of the story was like an AI specifically created, like a machine AI that was created by these people, and he wanted to fuse with her because she was actually a human inside, and she was different. They wanted to fuse. I thought that's what his objective in the original. In this one, it felt like he was a failed experiment, but he was also human. And in the end, it was almost like more of a love story rather than a fusion kind of thing.
I thought it was
I don't
brother
think they
sister or
did
something
fusion at all, right? I mean,
Isn't that what happened in the original?
they
Though?
didn't
They
even
sort of
do
became
that.
the same person. Yeah.
In the
My
original,
favourite
but not in
scene was where like that, except where the guy, the puppeteer, would I think he dies. Well, not dies, but like all his functions are gone except he's still talking to the major in his head.
Yeah.
And it's surreal. It's almost like he's supposed to be dead. Well, I'm looking at a dead body, but he's talking to him, and it just like looks around at everything. That was one of my favourite scenes of the original, and they didn't do that in this at all.
Definitely the original did the very ending a lot better as well. Like the way that they spoke to each other and the fact that they did end up like fusing and stuff. This way I think they still did some kind of fusion. But it didn't really...
He was like, are you still
Yeah, you still there. It didn't really... It didn't do it very clearly. It didn't do it very
I
clearly.
felt like they didn't fuse.
And I liked...
They didn't say anything about fusing.
But I
and he
think-
just was like, I'm leaving
still in
somewhere.
there?
Yeah.
But I think that was just like kind of like a throwback. But
Yeah,
they didn't
maybe.
really fuse.
I also liked how at the very end of the original, Bato was the one who threw his arms over her to protect her from the shot so she didn't die. Whereas in this one, he wasn't even there. It was just like, they just shot the first guy. Like, oh, we're about to shoot the second one. And then it's just saved. And it's just like, oh, okay.
But they do, like, all the intentions of people were much clearer. Like,
Oh, yes.
yeah, in the original, it's like, why are you shooting both of them? What's happening? Right? And then in the new one, it's like, okay, we're trying to take them both out because the Mr. Cutter guy,
Yeah.
he was a weird villain. I mean,
He was very absent for the first half of the film. I didn't even really know who he
didn't
was.
really feel like much of a villain.
No.
They tried to make
What did
him
he
one.
want?
I think he wasn't supposed to be a villain. I think he's your archetype of like a military man. He just wants a weapon. And
Okay.
he's
Yeah,
just
but I don't understand how he's
supposed to-
committing a criminal offence by doing that. Is
Yeah,
it
he's-
sort of,
I don't
he probably has higher ups above him.
No,
To
because
me, it can't-
he
He
killed
killed
a lot. Like he
people.
kidnapped people from the slums and experimented.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
Yeah,
they've
that's-
exposed all that.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Hence the 98 people killed and whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I didn't realise that was all exposed at the end. I thought it was just something that she knew about.
To be fair, it didn't exactly point that out. Like,
Yeah.
they did. Sort
Which
of.
in the end it didn't matter because he just shot the guy.
Yeah.
You have my consent, you just shoot the villain. It's like, well,
Alright.
that's
You said the
a
magic
clear
word.
cut way to end
Justice.
it. It's like there's no arresting this guy and giving him a fair trial and just shoot him.
You said the magic word,
Mm.
consent. That wasn't a thing at all, right? In the
No.
old one?
No, there was none of
And,
that.
like, they only seemed to put it in for the effect of it, just having consent, and then
Yeah.
saying,
One where it was
I
like,
do not
"You
consent."
we never needed your consent.
Yeah,
It's like,
just the effect. Oh man,
This-
you didn't have my consent.
This version was really over dramatic. Maybe not always over dramatic, but it was definitely a very dramatic.
It was almost like
movie.
cartoony.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Everyone's reactions are a bit, and all the fight scenes were a bit over the top.
Mm.
I mean, sure, it's an action movie, but it wasn't. I don't know.
Even that it wasn't much of an action movie. It had some
Yeah,
shots.
first half
Yeah.
had more action than the second half. Also, like, I'm not too sure why the main, well, not the main villain, but the hacker guy, why is he all hooded up and shit? Isn't he just, like, by himself anyway? Who's watching him? Why is he wearing a hood? He looks like the Emperor from Star Wars, and I'm just like,
And-
why is he wearing a hooded cloak? I
Well,
just think
you would assume that he has to get around somehow, right? So
But
if
he
he's in,
goes with other bodies.
does he? I mean, he's got his
Well,
main body,
originally
right?
he said he
did.
set up his own network, and he was
But he's got his
controlling
like his
people.
main body, and
Yeah.
then he has to get around some, and he looks
That's
really
the thing,
suspicious with all his like
Yeah.
jacked up
Okay.
body,
Like,
right?
how did he-
Complete robot at this point.
Yeah.
He gets other bodies to do what he wants by
You
manipulating
see
their
so much
bodies.
weird shit in this movie, and people walking around as robots and things like that. They don't seem to bat an eye, you know, with the guy with the new eyes and shit. No one seems to give a crap.
But everything's like pristine, and he's all like battered up. He'd probably like draw a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just felt weird that he just looked so overly dramatic visually for who he was. I don't know. And even like, that's again, like I didn't realise that he was also a human failed experiment because he certainly behaved
Wasn't
like an
supposed to.
AI as well, just trying to survive. And I actually preferred that original concept in the original movie, that he was an AI that was created and trying to find any way he could survive, and whether it was ethical or not to kill this kind of life that you'd created.
Yeah.
I found that to be more interesting. Even if I didn't get that much out of the story in the original, I still appreciated that direction more than what we got here.
Sure. I think he was like a little too tangible, right? He was like right there, as opposed to the original where it was like a little mysterious.
Elusive
Yeah.
and
It's like,
stuff like that. Yeah,
you can't really get a hard
You had-
grasp of him.
It had more of like a detective drama feel to it in the original. This one's like it's giving everything to you. You know everything.
That's
And-
true. Yeah. But I mean, the old one does kind of go a little too far, where you have no idea what's happening.
yeah. It's sort of
That's true.
can't balance it out.
We've got to dumb it down for Hollywood, right? So
Yep.
I guess.
So one critique I do have, especially in this version, was again with the sequence of the trash collector guy, was that if he was sort of in control of himself, and then the puppeteer took control of him to go ram the vehicle, why was he already wearing the jacket with the invisible sort of technology on it?
Well, I think he already set it up beforehand because he had the weapons and everything as well as all the cloak.
Yeah, but if the
So-
trash collector's like got his own mind at this point in time, why am I wearing this
No,
jacket? Why
no.
are these guns here?
It's not that like he's manipulated their minds to be the way they are.
So they
At
like
that
don't
moment,
see
yeah.
the guns. They don't.
That's
realize
why-
it's gonna be
The way they
like,
showed
he
us-
looks at a photo of himself and he sees his
Yeah,
daughter.
but the way they showed us visually in this version,
Oh,
he was
yeah.
just sitting in the car and just like,
Yeah.
and then starts driving. It's just like he just suddenly took
Yeah.
control of him.
That's
Yeah.
And then
fair
it
enough.
gives you the impression that he had control of his own mind before
Yeah,
that.
to be honest,
Yeah,
when I
that's
said
true.
that, I was referring more to the anime and
Yeah,
like them
in the
ripping that.
anime, that's why it made more sense in the anime, because you didn't know he was under the control until the end. He showed
Maybe
the
they
memories were
wanted
false.
to make it really obvious.
They
that he's
needed
under
the really
control.
like the stupid audience to
It's
get
like,
that this
oh,
guy was
right.
being
That's
controlled.
that's
Right.
fucking Hollywood. That's Hollywood for you.
Oh, no.
There's no subtlety allowed in movies.
Let's talk about the Toga-san guy.
Oh, the guy with the white hair, the old Japanese dude.
No.
No, the cop who's supposed to be
The human.
relatable, the human guy.
Oh,
Oh, the guy with the
Thomas.
revolver.
Was he there for like 2 seconds
Yeah.
talking in English when the Japanese?
just
did
for the
this?
debriefing and
Yeah.
stuff, and that was it.
Because in the original, he had like a relatively
He was
In
there.
the
big issue,
start,
right?
at least.
yeah,
Yeah.
as in he was more of a major character, and the whole point of his character was he's supposed to be like
The
a
human.
contrast between the being
Being
human,
fully human.
as opposed to cybernetic.
Yeah.
In this one, he like the first time I watched the movie, I didn't even notice him
Who was him.
because he was
Yeah.
some generic character.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I didn't notice him in this film.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually the old Japanese dude in the end, because he was the one with the revolver.
he
Yeah.
was he was I like the old Japanese guy. He's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
He was
It seemed
He was
weird that he
badass.
was like the only dude in Japan that spoke Japanese.
yeah.
Everyone else spoke English.
They're
But
like,
there was like Japanese writing everywhere.
Yeah.
we have
Geishas
to-
and everything else, and it's just all this traditional
And most
culture.
of the people were white.
That's something I picked up at the start. It's like, alright, to hide the fact that everyone else is white, like, and everything else, the only thing
have
that
a
would
really
make sense
obvious
to be
Japanese
Japanese, just make everything else Japanese. Because why not?
It's like the one dude in the film that speaks Japanese like the whole show. It's just, I don't know. It felt a little bit odd.
But like they took Toga-san's revolver, like his old-fashioned gun thing, and gave it to
this
the
character,
old
yeah.
guy. Yeah.
Probably because he had more relevance in this story.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
actually
that's what I
thought
said.
he was him, just another version of
That's
him.
what I said to you, like, is that supposed to be a reference to the Magnum gun that the
Yeah.
other guy
Yeah.
had?
Yeah.
Because everyone else had electric guns because of the time.
But they didn't really explain it either. So if you
Yeah, that
didn't
you
really
wouldn't
watch
know.
the old one, then like the reference to the old gun is like he just
Everyone
has
would
an
have
old
just said
gun.
that everyone's just using normal guns that like fire like every other gun, but they're actually using electric automated guns, whereas that Magnum is the only one that isn't the fucking
It's just
electric
like
gun.
retro, and he's like living
Yeah.
the old days.
I
with
got that
the
impression, but he also had the enhancements to communicate with his mind and stuff, so he wasn't totally against the development of new technology. I would have preferred him to be one or the others, and if he was completely traditionalist in the old sense of doing things, then he wouldn't have had any enhancements. I feel he kind of contradicts that by having mind communication, as efficient that is for running a government organisation.
Maybe he's not that character though. I mean, because maybe the whole gun thing is he's kind of got that old-fashioned feel to him, but he's still open to enhancements and stuff.
I don't know. I feel like
Like
that's
a
Yeah,
traditional
it's got
guy.
like nostalgic feel.
Yeah,
he like did
yeah.
some good stuff in the old days
Sure.
with that gun.
It didn't really establish that. Then he just pulls out a revolver and he just goes
so
and
they,
shoots guys.
they just kind of got rid of the character that's human and is supposed to be relatable. So they
Yeah,
just
I
got rid
didn't
of
like
it.
that personally. I'm like, where is that guy? Like, okay, we'll take him out. Whatever. No one cares about him.
And like you said, they didn't really set up a clear villain for the show. Like, we thought it was the puppeteer hacker dude, and it still seemed that
So
way
it should've
basically in the original. But it was really this other manufacturer, contractor guy, Mr. Cutter, who wasn't really that relevant in most of the film. So I feel like without sort of a clear villain, like she didn't know who to trust at that point when she was told that she was just an AI and her memories were false. she didn't know who to trust, including her own organization, because I kind of thought that Mr. Cutter dude was part of the organization, and she was going to turn against all of them and help the puppeteer guy. But it's like, it wasn't quite like that. It didn't really define the different sections within their organization.
We only heard about Section 9, right?
Yeah, Section 9. In the original, there was Section 6, who were the bad guys, and who were trying to obviously, like, control the AI puppeteer guy or whatever, use him as a weapon and shit. And Section 9, who were, like, the good guys. Or at least that's the way it felt. It wasn't really, like, clear-cut either way.
Can I say, with the garbage guy in the cell, isn't that just like a horrifically bad cell if he can just kill himself?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like he just like falls down on his neck and boom, he's dead.
It was,
like,
it was a weird way to die too.
Yeah.
I felt like it was also weird that you start the scene that she's in there talking with him with like a virtual presence, and then like she goes in there afterwards with her real presence. Okay, what's the fucking point in that? I wasn't too sure what was going on in this scene. As in, like, you have a virtual presence talking to the prisoner, and then she like
I think it's just supposed to be a safety thing.
And then but then she just walks in there afterwards. Yeah. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Also, she keeps disobeying. Like,
yeah,
her I don't know. It seemed a little odd that she keeps disobeying.
If you build a person to be a weapon, but then you're like, I'm just gonna leave you with all of your like.
I was gonna go take a dive in the ocean. That wouldn't happen if you were literally a weapon under government control. As in, you wouldn't be that free. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of them in Section 9 and obviously, like, the boss guy with the revolver definitely, like, respected her humanity and used her as a cop or an agent or whatever, but the rest of them wouldn't. And it just seemed like weird that she had so much freedom to do as she pleased and she never really got in trouble for it. Also, wasn't in the original, her diving into the ocean was supposed to be really dangerous because she wouldn't float, that she'd sink or something?
No.
That wasn't supposed to be a danger thing to her?
She floated. I mean, like, there was a chance that her flotation would, like, cut out and she'd sink. Yeah. Which was why the dude was like, aren't you scared?
Yeah.
But then, because she does float, because she's got a flotation thing, she's like, it makes me feel human.
Yeah, I think they didn't really
do that scene well.
Yeah.
No one was like, why are you in the water?
Yeah.
He was just like, what's it like? She's like, it's dark, it's cold.
Like, they had the same...
She even feels cold.
They had the same dialogue in some aspects.
The same elements, I guess, but just, I don't know, it didn't make as much sense.
It didn't feel as significant as in the original.
I mean, to be honest, we didn't get that much in the original, and that was probably the most we ever got about her existential crisis. And in the original, we never even got to understand whether she was human or AI or whatever. I never really clarified that for us. Whereas in this one, it's just like, you're getting through, she has an existential crisis, they tell her that her memories are false and she's an AI, and then she discovers the truth, and then the end. So that's a lot easier to connect with your protagonist in that way, because you can definitely follow along the story because you're just as confused as she is, and that's kind of the whole point. So that was definitely a lot better in that regard.
I'm trying to think, like, there's moments where I swear they should have been smarter than this. So, like, for instance, when the Major calls back the head chief on the fucking... what do you call it? Like the headphone.
The mind comms.
Yeah, whatever the thing they call that. And it's intercepted or is always jammed and stuff like that. She should have known not to call back the chief and see him in person in some way. Mm. But she does it anyway. It's intercepted by Mr. Carter. And of course Mr. Carter knows about the whole thing, and then they have to fight them.
Wow, wiretaps in the future. No way.
Yeah, you don't think... In a world where it's just filled with technology and stuff. Something that being a cop, you would know, or you should.
I think when you're going to go down like a sci-fi or a futuristic route, when you haven't properly defined what the limits of your technology are, if you don't establish that properly, then you feel like then they could have done this and they could have done this. Why didn't they do something like this? Because they haven't really constrained the level of technology that they're at. And I feel like that's an important part if you're going to build a world that we don't understand yet. You've got to give us these limitations. So we're like, well, why didn't they just use this technology, or why didn't they do something? It seems like they could pull off something like this. Why couldn't they do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I liked the addition of the mother.
Yeah, I personally like that too.
It was definitely more of a scene that provided her humanity. Like, this is when she was discovering that she actually could have been human at one point, that she wasn't just an AI. Obviously, the memories she was given were false, but it doesn't mean she was an AI. She actually did come from somewhere, from something. It didn't go too much into her backstory, But it was definitely good to see nonetheless, because that's what we needed to see more of. We needed to see more to be able to connect with this character.
It was kind of weird how she just kind of invited her into her house.
Yeah, she sort of just went there.
She's like, "Hi, you want to come in?"
She didn't really even say anything, and she kind of, "Oh, come in."
So let me make you some tea.
You look so oddly like my daughter.
When you look at me, and it's got the same look she always has and everything.
A bit suspicious in nature. She's like all silent.
Almost
and shit,
too
doesn't
trusting for no reason. It was...
Nice old lady. As in, I still enjoyed the movie. I got the concept of what the story was about. I think a lot more than the original. But yeah, I definitely think they could have done a much better job. Not that I have any personal ideas of how to go about doing that, but I feel like as much as they were headed in the right direction in terms of their characters, they just didn't quite go as far as I wanted them to go with characters. I don't know. Especially in the way that she behaved. Like, again, she was just like emotionless, and then she was emotional, but she wouldn't really talk, so you couldn't really understand how she was feeling. I'm not saying you need to really like shove it down our throats how she's feeling. I feel that. But I mean, like, you need to elaborate more from what happens in this next scene or what happens in here. There's a lot of ways you can communicate this information to your audience without her having to explicitly say how she feels. In the end, we didn't really get much of a connection. Obviously, we just got her journey when she would discover this, and then she would discover this, and then she discovered this, but we never really got to see how she felt about anything. She just hid it the whole time, you know?
I think all you got was the same facial animations all the time. Every single time it's the same.
Yeah, it's just a dead straight, like, serious face, which made her seem more like a machine than a human.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they didn't really pull that off too well. She tried to be robotic, which doesn't quite work.
Doesn't really fit the character.
Yeah.
She's someone who wants to be human, but she behaves like a robot.
I think what they did at the start was really cheap, where they show you she's in the thing and going to be put in the shell.
Yeah.
And then you find out later, as you're going through, they're like, oh, maybe she's not real. And then they come out with the old lady that she is real.
Mm.
It's kind of,
I guess it's supposed to indicate the manipulation by telling her that she's not, that her memories are false and things like that. I was trying to get her to do what they want, which is basically their goal, wasn't it? Was to give her false memories so she'd be more motivated to be used. But that's like a very loose way of controlling your weapon.
Yeah.
Just give them memories and hope they fucking go in the right direction.
There's no restraint.
We just touch on the whole whitewashing thing, the whole controversy. In fact, if you watch the flashback, like, you know how they showed Cutter kidnapping all the kids and like beating up, and then
what's it called?
She's a little Asian girl.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Obviously, because her mum's Asian.
Yeah. So they kind of do address that a little bit. So that her appearance as Scarlett Johansson is just the shell. Yeah.
I think that was always supposed to be the case. Like, the shell doesn't necessarily mean that she was Japanese or anything. It's just, this is the shell she's in.
This is the body that she's in.
Yeah, I did like that the dude kind of, like, if you look at them, they look quite similar. I don't know if it was like the makeup or something, but they both had like similar skin tone, similar nose shape.
That's what I was thinking, because it said somewhere early in the film that he'd been in this body before or something as well. At least I remember hearing that line somewhere, and I was like, wait, is she not the first person to be in that shell? Or are they talking about something else? I don't know, it kind of confused me a bit, but when I got to that scene when we first saw the puppeteer, I thought, yeah, they do look oddly similar in physique and things like that. When he first took off his cloak, I thought that he was actually in a woman's body. But then obviously you got a more clearer look on him, and he was in a male body, but it's just like, I don't know, it's very similar in appearance.
Them nice pecs.
Got pecs, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little blown out of proportion. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. I mean, like, story-wise, it makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
It's one of those things where if I hadn't seen the original, I'm not trying to compare it, and they had named it something completely different, and yeah, then I probably wouldn't have done the comparison and gone, yeah, this is okay, maybe this is pretty good.
Yeah, well, unfortunately you have to compare it, don't you?
Yeah, I just can't help it.
I feel like they could have just, like, not named it that, put different words and names to everything, and then released it, and no one would have, like, connected the dots.
Yeah.
What? Cyborgs with cloak and invisibility? I haven't heard that before.
Like, you could even rename it Deus Ex.
Deus Ex.
What?
Deus Ex.
Deus
Ex, sorry.
What is
or is
Deus Ex?
Deuce. Number 2X. But yeah, you could use that title and it would be the same thing.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
it's the same.
I mean, would you guys be happier if the main lead role or major was an Asian girl?
I don't think it matters. I don't think it would have changed anything in
It
terms
wouldn't
of
have
the story.
made the movie any better.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know.
if I had to
don't
rate
think
out of
so.
10, I'd probably rate it higher than the original. We've noticed a few things in the original that I definitely preferred. So I'd probably give it maybe a 6 out of 10. Maybe a 6 out of 10. Just because they did the characters better. Not as good as I wanted them to, but I was able to follow along with the story and understand why they were doing the things that they were doing. And I didn't get lost. I didn't get too bored. I mean, there was a lot of expository dialogue in the second half of the film. But yeah, it still wasn't great either. So I'd probably give about a 6 out of 10, personally.
Cool. I was bored the whole time. It was like such a standard Hollywood film that I feel like if I hadn't have seen the original one, I would have just not even... I don't think I would have got even halfway through. Not because it was bad necessarily, it just didn't give anything.
It just wasn't interesting or exciting.
Yeah. Like, it was just so standard. So I don't know how to rate it. I guess maybe a 4.
Whoa, that's
I mean, like,
flipped
that's
around.
what-
I,
Right.
yeah. I like appreciate. I'm like, yeah, cool. There was some cool stuff that I can't think of off the top of my head. Unfortunately,
Justified.
maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should do less than a 4. I'm gonna stick with a 4, but I'm not like super mad about anything like that. It wasn't the original because I don't know. The original is the original. You don't need to do it again.
Yeah,
But it was just
pretty
so
much.
standard Hollywood that I just don't care. So
I'm looking forward to the Death Note fucking live action.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
I think I'll give it probably 6.5 maybe.
6.5 maybe?
Yeah.
Feeling
I think
like
it's-
I'm being a bit generous with 6, but
Maybe 6. Maybe a low 6. Maybe low 6.
6.1, 6.2.
Yeah, something like that. Low
Anywhere
6
within
maybe.
that range, just you have some play.
I
A
think-
bit of wiggle room.
I don't know. It seemed gave me kind of like a Blade Runner feel. The visuals were pretty interesting, I guess. The action was probably more interesting. Yeah, it was a pretty generic film, so.
I don't think
low
I've seen
6.
enough movies to be like dulled by all the sort of generic shit just yet.
it's probably
You know?
you still have some enjoyment left in you.
I'm not completely dead inside just yet.
Not 100% cynical on it.
Yeah.
No.
But, yeah.
I still enjoy good action and stuff, but yeah, I don't think I've seen enough of this sort of bland, reused formulas to be completely bored of it just yet. I'm not saying
Lucky
I'm
you.
lucky.
I'm not particularly big on rating numbers, but like if you had to force me, I guess I would give it like a 5 to 6 between them. Because as much as I didn't,
Potato out of 10.
yeah, just
Apple out of oranges.
a potato and a pear out of
Yeah.
a melon.
No,
But yeah, as much as I didn't really hate it, it's not like I liked it either. There's
about an average.
yeah, it's just like I'm just dead
Yeah.
in the middle there, just kind of whatever. There are things that like I missed that, like the audio. They didn't put in the old music, the very
Oh,
ambient
sure,
music
sure.
in there.
Yeah.
I personally like that, but yeah, that's out. As well as they changed the spider tank thing.
Yeah.
They made that really clunky and just I don't know, like plate armor looking rather
Totally
than the really
defeats the purpose.
Yeah,
of a
the whole
six-legged
purpose.
tank.
yeah originally the whole purpose of that tank was to be maneuverable and get through gaps and shit. But whatever.
Yeah, the music for sure. The original definitely had an awesome soundtrack and had that odd, haunting, kind of sharpish kind of.
I like they at least put it in
pitching.
the ending credits. Of,
Yeah, I heard it in the ending credits as
Okay.
I was going
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, there's a little homage there. But
There's like the chanting one, and there's like the really like the bell chiming
Yeah,
one. It's
yeah.
very
Yeah.
slow, shing, shing. But yeah, they didn't
Yeah,
do
the
any
new
of
one
that.
was pretty
Or at least I
generic
didn't
and
notice it.
nothing
like,
particularly.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess that's me. 5 out of 10.
Cool.
Yeah.
Get a meh.
a meh out of.
So collectively,
a meh out of
a
10.
meh out of 10.
A Hollywood out of whatever.
I think that wraps it up. So
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we've pretty much
thanks,
gone over.
thanks for watching another episode of the Fat Potato Podcast.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers.